Writing a medical personal statement can feel super daunting. You've got 4,000 characters to convince the person reading it that you're a good fit for an interview and for the course that they're offering. In many cases, it can feel like this is the most important piece of writing that you've done in your life so far. So how do you even approach this, and what do you even do? Well, if that's what you're wondering, you're in the right place. My name's Maria and I'm a fourth year medical student studying at the University of Cambridge. So my own personal statement managed to get me 4 medical school offers, including one from Cambridge. Since then, I've read so many personal statements and given feedback to so many students as well. So I'd say I've seen quite a few and I can really gauge how good or bad a personal statement is. So the first things I want to consider are just general advice on the personal statement. So just the really key things that you need to be bearing in mind throughout. Then after that, I want to talk about what you need to do before you even get pen to paper and actually start writing the personal statement. The third section is going to be about the general structure of your personal statement, and there are so many things to unpack here, but luckily with medicine it's relatively formulaic in how you can write it. So yeah, this is just my general advice. And then as a fourth point is actually proofreading and making sure your personal statement is super polished and ready for you to actually hand in. So I think with the personal statement, something that's really worth remembering is that it is almost like an essay where you're trying to convince the reader that you are a good fit for their course. It's super powerful if you can have a storyline in there, so everything links together. So from your general initial interest to then further work and supercurricular activities that you've done to reinforce that interest and explore it further. The other super important thing I want to hammer in at the start is that it's important to have a mature reflection. You could have done hundreds of cool work experiences and read many, many books, but the thing is you need to be able to explain what you've taken away from that and why that's helped you become a better applicant. You need to constantly link this throughout, showing what sort of skills you've developed and the sort of motivation that's helped you develop in the first place. The other key thing with medical personal statements, including those for OXBRIDGE, is that you really need to have a strong academic focus here. They really don't care that much if you've done Silver DOV or you can play the clarinet. Like, it's just not that relevant in terms of you being a doctor. So I would say it's probably worth having at least 75 to 80% of your personal statement focused on academics and the course as a whole. So that could include your work experiences or you doing Olympiads, but I'll get onto that in a bit. The last thing is, and I think this goes without saying, is always be positive about yourself. This is your time to shine and to really sell yourself as an applicant. So please don't criticize yourself. Like, you really need everything to be going for you here. This isn't really the time to flag up your weaknesses. Okay, so you might think, let's just get straight to writing it, but actually there are so many things that you need to do before you start, and I think that helps make the process a lot less daunting and a lot easier. So I think a really good place to start, and this is actually something I saw from one of the applicants that I was reading their personal statement of, was actually try and gauge what the universities actually want. Go onto their website and see what their advice is. They will be looking for a whole bunch of skills. So things like honesty, diligence, work ethic, teamwork, leadership, empathy. There are so many buzzwords out there that they're going to mention, and it would be incredible if you can integrate these into your personal statement, using those skills to say why you would be such a great fit for their course. So go out there, collate those, and then this will be a great starting point for when you actually begin to write your personal statement. The next thing I think I found really useful is just get everything you've done out on paper so you can see where you're at. Any leadership roles you've had, any placements, any volunteering, any essay competitions, Olympiads, you name it, get it all down on paper so you can see how it even looks and how much there is to work with. Personally, I did this as a mind map, so I had the general medicine thing in the middle, and then from there I'd have like experiences and like supercurriculars coming out, and then they'd all have different skills linked to them, and that helped me see what actually fit together and what could flow really well as a structure. Sometimes it's really helpful to group things by the sort of skills you gain from them, so you can kind of join them together as a reflection later on. The next thing I think is really useful, and it kind of goes against what some people recommend, is actually to go out there and read other people's personal statements, especially ones that you know have been successful. And that's because it's really important to see the sort of caliber of personal statements that land people with offers in the first place, so you even know what you're aiming for. I was really fortunate because at my school they had collated a whole bunch of personal statements from previous years, which we could read. Even if you're not in that position, there are so many successful medical personal statements out there online. So as you can see, I've linked my video of my successful personal statement above, but there are so many other ones on YouTube, on this website called the Medic Collective, but also on the Student Room. Obviously, they're not going to be perfect, but being able to gauge the level they're at is super helpful in my opinion. After that, just start writing a draft. Your first draft is going to be terrible, it's going to be too long, and it's not going to flow nicely. But the thing is, you're going to have everything on paper, and then you're not going to be, looking at a blank screen for ages and getting panicked. Once you've got things on paper, you actually have something to work with, to fix, to tweak, and that should then make everything a lot easier. Make sure you leave plenty of time though, so you have time to take breaks between, writing the personal statement and then looking back at it with fresh eyes before then changing things. Also, make sure to save any drafts you have just in case you change your mind. Okay, so let's go into how to actually structure the personal statement. So a lot of the personal statements I've read tend to follow the same sort of structure, and even though you can go for something else, I know this one works, so this is the one I'm recommending. So the first thing you can start off with is an introduction. It doesn't have to be super long, but it's nice to introduce why you want to do medicine. This can be a really simple and somewhat cliche reason, like the fact that you really enjoy science, you want to have a profound impact on people's lives and want to help them. It can be related to your own personal experiences though, or seeing people go through something and you being a supportive member there. Something I also found is quite helpful is actually just starting off with something from your work experience which was particularly powerful to you. That can be a really good springboard for then developing your story afterwards. So after you've done the introduction, I think the next important thing to go on to is your work experience. So really weaving in the sort of skills you've developed, the things you've seen in hospitals, and actually showing an understanding of the healthcare system and where it's lacking. You might do maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs on your work experience depending on how much you've done. The thing is though, it's much better to go into a few examples in a lot of detail showing reflection rather than just listing every single thing you've done. From there, I think it's super helpful to then talk about volunteering. This is great because it shows a long-term commitment, so I would recommend having done something between 6 and 12 months. So I spent time at a care home. It's really useful to use really active verbs here. This helps to really convey the message that you actually took on an active role and were a member of the team and really did something useful. It's also a great way to show that you've overcome challenges and you've developed your empathy and compassion here as well. The next thing I really want to talk about is supercurriculars. So I think this can really make you stand out as an applicant, especially if you've done some really impressive things. And I would say if you've done cool supercurriculars, really go into detail about those, because this is what's going to set you apart as a candidate and make you look even more impressive. There are so many cool supercurriculars you can do which are relevant to medicine. I have a whole video on supercurriculars for OXBRIDGE applications, so do check that out. But a few key examples would be entering essay competitions, doing an EPQ, taking part in any form of research. Make sure you're still linking these in to why that's going to make you a good applicant. So as you're now getting towards the end of your personal statement, this is a good time to talk about your extracurriculars. So this is helpful because it shows that you're a well-rounded applicant. You have a life outside of your medicine application, and that's super important for ensuring you have a work-life balance while in medical school. It's also a great way to show that you have like leadership abilities and you can work as a team, so it's good to bring in those skills here as well. If you've done anything at school or as part of a society, this can be really, really useful here. And then the last thing is the conclusion. So I would recommend keeping this short and sweet. The conclusion is a great way to be very cliche. I would say try to stick to only 2 sentences and make it very personal to you, because you want it to feel genuine as well. I think the introduction and the conclusion are some of the hardest bits to get right and to make them actually sound heartfelt and genuine. So I would recommend leaving those until the end and just tweaking them quite a bit, just because they won't turn out the way you want them at the very start. So the third part is just making sure that it's all proofread and there are no spelling or grammar mistakes. And this is because they really tend to pull you down and the examiners won't really look at you as seriously. So I'd recommend, first of all, just proofreading it yourself a few times and actually reading it out loud. That's going to help you pick up on any errors that you have, but also help you flag up any really long run-on sentences. Using online grammar checkers like Grammarly will also be really helpful here as well. After that, I'd recommend getting a close family member to read through it. I asked my mum and she was super helpful. She has a lot of experience in editing, writing anyway, so she could pick up any of my mistakes, which there were quite a few of anyway. Once you've checked it yourself and you've gotten feedback from a close family member, I found it really helpful then getting somebody at school to do it. So we had a scheme where you had a teacher who was kind of responsible for your personal statement and would give you feedback on it. I would recommend getting a science teacher to do this because they will have a bit more subject relevant knowledge and will be able to advise with a medical personal statement better. But I also recommend getting feedback from somebody who's a humanities or English teacher, just because they can assess the quality of written communication a bit better in lots of cases. You can also ask an older student who's been through the experience to give you feedback as well. I did this and I'm also offering this service to anybody who needs it. So if you would be interested in having somebody who is at Cambridge reading your personal statement and giving line by line feedback, just drop me a message and I'm sure we can work something out. But yeah, what I would recommend though is don't send your personal statement out to many people, just because after a certain point you'll get a lot of conflicting feedback and it'll be quite difficult to actually choose how to fix your personal statement. So I'd recommend don't really go over 4 or 5 people in this sort of situation. So as promised, like I said at the beginning of the video, you might have a whole bunch of achievements that you just don't really seem to fit into that short personal statement. Well, don't worry, not all is lost. There are other places you can manage to fit these in. So for example, you might have done your Duke of Edinburgh award, or you might have done something like a music qualification and have like a grade 8 in piano or clarinet. Well, in those cases, you can actually declare those alongside your GCSEs, and so the people reading and looking at your application will be able to see those anyway. So as promised, there is kind of a sneaky way to get in some of your other achievements in, even if you can't fit them into the main body of the personal statement. So for example, some qualifications like the Duke of Edinburgh can be declared alongside your GCSEs, so you can leave that for that. In addition to that, your teachers write a reference about you, and that's lots of additional words where they can mention some of your achievements. So you could just simply let them know, you could just email them, or some schools like the one I went to actually gave us a form that we had to fill in, and we could list out all the achievements we had and would make our reference look better. And that was a great way to shuttle a lot of information from the personal statement to the reference instead. So I think that's all from me today. So in summary, we talked about the general tips of the personal statement. So actually what kind of mindset and approach to take to it, then the things to do before starting the personal statement and getting pen to paper, then the general structure of a personal statement, and last of all, actually polishing it all up and moving content to other places. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to contact me. That can just be in the comments, or find me on Instagram, or email me, whatever you want. But anyway, I hope that was helpful. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like and subscribe. That's all from me. Bye guys.